I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Amanda Peet, co-creator and showrunner for The Chair. Amanda, you're well known, obviously, for being an actor and a writer, and now you're a first-time showrunner on a high-profile Netflix dramedy. So how did this shift in your career come about?
Well, I think incrementally over time, I started to try to write probably in maybe 2007-ish after Studio 60. And then I wrote a couple plays, and then eventually I had this idea for a show about an English department, and that's kind of how it happened. So I felt like I'm at a huge advantage, obviously, because I've been an actress for 25 years. So I'm not, first of all, I'm not afraid of actors, for one thing. I mean, certain actors I'm afraid of, but none of the ones that I hired, thankfully. So yeah.
So it is an advantage, isn't it, coming from an acting background to then kind of take the reins on a series? I mean, it's it's a very different discipline, but yet it seems to be something in your wheelhouse that that can help you kind of steer the ship, right?
Yeah, I think I think that it helped me with understanding what good dialogue is over the years, and then also just sort of knowing, just being on a set for so many years and understanding what everybody does, and not being hugely intimidated by that was really helpful. I don't know what I was already scared, so I don't know what I would have done if I'd never been on a set before. I probably would have just been in the bathroom the whole time panicking.
Yeah, that's good. So it's good that you had that to kind of propel you into this, pretty challenging role. And then, of course, the subject matter of the show is so current, and a lot of people want to talk about, the so-called culture wars and how academia is certainly a battleground for that. I love how the show doesn't shy away from ageism and sexism. And of course, when Bill's off-the-cuff riff about Hitler goes viral and triggers this outrage. So long story short, there's a lot to unpack over 6 pretty short episodes. What was the genesis of kind of trying to tackle that very current issue?
Well, I really wanted to make a romantic comedy, because those are some of my favorite movies and shows. And Jay Duplass and I were working on an idea for a while about a widower who has an affair with his boss. And then, I was reading a lot of these stories, as we all were, about, cancellations on campuses and professors transgressing. And I thought it would be really interesting, especially because I was also really interested in the idea of women in leadership and female supervisors, and how there's often a lot of pressure to be quite, for lack of a better way of describing it, like quite masculine and binary in your thinking. And I think that one of the things I've been thinking about is that I think empathy is an important leadership quality. And so Sandra and I were really interested in talking about that idea that empathy isn't a weakness when you're in a supervising role necessarily. And the ability to take in multiple perspectives at once is an advantage. And we both wanted to explore that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because often the problem in society in certain circumstances is that there's not enough empathy in putting yourself in the other person's shoes. This show actually does tackle that in a really nuanced way, and it does so with women at the helm on the show, and of course with you behind the scenes. So what would you say is the most exciting or interesting part of having women at the helm, as the characters and also behind the scenes?
Well, it didn't occur to me to write something that wasn't from Ji-yoon's perspective. As soon as I had the idea and started thinking about what it's like to be a woman of color who's ascending the ranks in her profession for the first time, and having had to navigate the culture in an old institution, and then also having been as I think a lot of women of color are and people of color are when they ascend the ranks, being underestimated, and then just grappling with a bunch of shit that's on top of what your job is. And yeah, I mean, the thing that always comes to my mind is we were getting short with each other, me and the DP and the AD and the director. We were having like words with each other because we were running out of time and we didn't agree on what needed to be done in the short amount of time we had. And so I was like, everybody outside. And basically it was like a therapy session, like a really quick therapy session. But my husband was like, oh my God, maybe the future is female. Because we were able to just, you know, discuss, you know, and not get, you know, not get our egos involved and sort of give everybody a say. And yeah.
Yeah.
And Sandra was always laughing and saying, oh my God, it's like having 4 people who are running the show who have all been in therapy. It's a huge advantage.
Like, yeah, exactly. Emotionally intelligent people, like with higher EQ, not being combative, not being adversarial, trying to get to an outcome. Wow. Like,
And I think that natural,
yeah.
natural collaborative spirit, you know, I definitely really wanted to be on a show that had that openness. And yeah, I know a lot of, you know, amazing directors and showrunners for whom that doesn't work. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's your vision and then you have to toe the line, but I'm just not like that. So yeah.
Seems to work. With Sandra Oh as the number 1 on the call sheet. By the way, it's just a really strong cast, like Jada Plassen, Bob Balaban, Holland Taylor, just to name a few. But Sandra Oh's number 1. She's the star of the show. What do you value most about her? What does she bring to the table that you really value?
Well, first of all, she's just like a true journeyman actor. Like she really cares about the whole company. She really perceives the crew as part of the company. And I think that's quite rare in a superstar, for her to have that perspective. And then she just deeply cares about acting and the work, and gives incredibly, is incredibly rigorous in terms of story and tracking her character and other people's characters. And but I think she's just really a special comedic actress to me. And doesn't always get to do that, but I really find that she just has that full range. I made jokes that the only other person I could think of who could be that funny and read as someone with a PhD is Emma Thompson. But she was too old to be opposite Jay Duplass. So yeah, I love that Sandra has like this just innate intelligence, and you believe her that she studied literature, but then she can also do a pratfall.
Exactly. Yeah, she's just got that right chemistry for this role. I totally agree. When I thought back to when I first watched The Chair, I remember seeing an article a few days beforehand saying something like, this is the best series on Netflix, something like that. It was very effusive and praising the show. I thought, oh, okay. I immediately wanted to see it. Binged it in one day. And then it made me remember the pressure on the showrunner must be pretty huge before the critics get to it and then the viewers see it, because word of mouth is so important. And, you know, Rotten Tomatoes, now everyone's kind of checking on that. And, you know, you've got 85% there. So I was wondering, what were you going through in the days leading up to the show's premiere before you realised that it was quite popular and people really loved it?
I was doing emergency shrink sessions on the phoners, as everything is a phoner these days. Yeah, just reminding myself to let go and let God. And, you know, once it's in the can, it's out of my hands. And yeah, it was really a hugely pleasant surprise that people seem to really like it. And yeah, it was a very personal journey for me. And so yeah, the fact that other people enjoyed it was just like crazy.
Yeah, it's probably a big sigh of relief as well.
Yes, my God, yes.
Yeah.
The worst, oh yeah, David and Dan, who, you know, my husband is David, who made Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. And they said that they kept forgetting that they had already told me, oh, you're in the worst part. You know, like production is the worst part. And I'd say, why didn't you tell me that? And then, oh yeah, waiting for critics, that's the worst part. You know, they kept, it was like a moving goalpost. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah, moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's
So anyway.
terrifying. Well, anyway, look, it's
I know.
good. Everyone loved it. So, Amanda, on that note, thank you for your time today. We'll bring you back for our group chat shortly.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor here at Gold Derby with Clyde Phillips, creator and showrunner for the Dexter revival, New Blood. Clyde, you departed as showrunner of the original Dexter series following a 4th season that saw Dexter take down the Trinity Killer. It was Dexter at its peak, and then unfortunately, the show never really maintained that level, in my opinion. And I'm wondering, what did you want to achieve or address this time around to make up for where the show perhaps sputtered towards its disappointing series finale?
Well, basically, we all wanted to not just redeem the end of season 8, but to acknowledge that time had passed, and this is not Dexter season 9, and to regain the trust of the audience, because I think in the last 4 years, particularly in the last couple of years of the show, all of the code and intimacy and rigor that Dexter would put himself through slipped away, and then the audience was watching a different show than they had signed up for in the first 4 years. And I think we've achieved that. I know we've achieved that in Dexter New Blood.
Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it, but the first 4 episodes I've seen, there's just that same sharp, it's just very pacey, and it just reminds me so much of early season Dexter's, so good. Now, you've already talked at length about how the revival came about, but what I would more like to know about is, after all the pressure of reviving this character and in some ways redeeming him or trying to, did this season, and particularly the series finale, did it meet your lofty expectations?
It exceeded them, actually. First of all, Michael C. Hall, I mean, is extraordinary. As an actor, as a man, he's one of the smartest people I know. When he asks a question, it means something. And I had Marco Ciega from the original series come back and direct, and was an executive producer, as is Michael, an executive producer. And I got, the phone call to do this in July 2019. And we worked for a year and a half, partly because of COVID, on the scripts. So we really had the scripts in great shape. And then we shot for 119 days, chasing the weather, chasing snow, all over Massachusetts. And I grew up in Boston, and I hadn't been to 90% of the towns that we were in. We were out in Western and Northern Massachusetts, and were welcomed by the towns, by the local people, and by the local businesses. And it just turned out wonderful.
Yeah, so you were mentioning offline that you've seen the series finale. Can you just tell us everything quietly? Or
sure, I'll just whisper, and then that way it won't be public. I just before this Zoom, I was watching my first time going through the finale. I was watching the director's cut. It's a script I wrote, and the director had called me. Marcos had called me and said he's just finished with this cut, and he thinks it's the best thing he's ever directed, and I think it's the best thing I've ever written. And I was watching with tears streaming down my face.
Wow, that's got to be so rewarding as a creator and a showrunner to have something hit you so viscerally, right?
Yes, rewarding is a word that I would use. To have everything fall into place, particularly after such an arduous schedule in these arduous times, to have everything fall into place. I'm always amazed when I write something and then the actor says it, and Michael and I have such a bond that we work things out before we shoot it. And he shows up ready and nails it all the time, and gives me whatever gives me and the director whatever nuance we need, or comes up with another idea in the moment. And it's ultimately just so satisfying. And we're so lucky to look what we do for a living. Everybody wants to do what we do. We're so lucky, you and I, and the others on this panel, we're just so lucky to be able to do this.
Yeah, to be able to talk about these works of art that move us and excite, it's just, this is a true gift, and it's amazing that we get to talk about it. The show is set 10 years after the original series finale. Dexter has moved upstate, so it's in a much different environment. It's not Miami, it's freezing cold upstate New York. What was the thinking behind making it as far away from Miami as possible and trying to live as a normal guy, even though this dark passenger obviously always lingers under the surface?
Well, there are a couple of things behind it. First of all, we wanted the show to look and feel different in every way from the moment the first frame comes up and we're listening to Iggy Pop all of a sudden. Another part is that Dexter has moved to the small town of Iron Lake, New York, which was actually Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, where we shot it. Population 2,760. And there's so much less temptation there for his dark passenger. He's just a country boy now, living out in a cabin, which you saw, we built that cabin that's on the lake. So a year ago right now, there were a bunch of laborers, men and women, building that cabin in freezing weather. And if he lived in LA or Chicago or Miami, there are many, 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 many people who deserve his kill table. Here, not so much. In Iron Lake, not so much. But as Michael keeps saying, this is Dexter. Somebody's going to die. And we managed to, I think, gracefully achieve that.
Oh, yeah. And no spoilers, as the first episode is aired, but the person who ends up kind of copying that first death, I was like, yeah, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. Now, audiences will wonder how many of the original cast we will see. We know Jennifer Carpenter's back. She co-stars as a version of Deb, Dexter's conscience. The show is not the same without those two, so I'm really glad you were able to bring her onto the show. Was it ever a question of her not coming on?
No, it was always there. And, Michael and Jennifer have their own history. And whenever she was on the set, she elevated Michael elevated her. It was a lot of fun. And then there are a couple of other actors that are coming back. John Lithgow. I mean, when you try to keep secrets in this day of social media. And so John Lithgow was nominated for an Emmy for Perry Mason. And somebody asked him a question about Dexter because they'd seen him on a plane. And he said, oh my gosh, yes, it was great. I got to see Michael Hall and Clyde Phillips and Jennifer Carpenter. Well, Jennifer was supposed to be a secret. But we realized that it just creates more interest for the audience, and the audience will be satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, John won an Emmy for that role as the Trinity Killer.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that he'll be back, obviously, I assume, in flashbacks. But yeah, that's a pretty huge get to be able to get him back on the show as well.
It was, you know what? It was a phone call. He's a friend of mine. I called him. I said, you want to do it? He said, I'm in. Tell me the date and let's do it.
But you know what? I think with all the great actors on the show, the find for me was Jack Alcott as Harrison Morgan, Dexter's son. I had not really been familiar with his work, and I am just completely drawn to him. I just think he is going to be the big star that comes out of this show. Do you agree that we've got more to come with him?
Well, first of all, we found Jack Alcott because he was in Good Lord Bird, also for Showtime, and watched him. And insofar as you trying to pry something out of me about the ending, all I can say is never say never, and that's as far as I can go.
Wow, I'm very excited by that because that's a fascinating character that you've written there. Final question is: this is purely a limited series, right? There's no chance that you'll keep it going.
That's asking me the same question. So good try. Not going there. It's not a limited series. It's a revival. So there's a difference in Emmy category stuff.
That's right.
So yeah,
that's why I'm asking. But okay, it's good to know. All right, well that's good because you know what, we're just gonna have to be patient, and Showtime will keep premiering these episodes, and people will watch, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from fans like me clamoring for more. But in the meantime, Clyde, thank you for coming on today. We're going to bring you back shortly for our panel chat.
Okay, thank you, Robert. See you in a little while.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with David S. Goyer, co-creator and showrunner for Foundation. Now, David, Foundation chronicles this 1,000-year saga of the Foundation and this galactic empire in decline. You know, it's based on the renowned Asimov novels, and I would say it's probably the most ambitious sci-fi source material to wrangle into a series probably ever.
Yeah.
You stuck the landing, though. It seems like you've stuck the landing and people are really happy with it. I'm interested to know what made you ultimately take the plunge and go on this journey, knowing that you could have so easily crashed and burned.
Well, first of all, I was offered the opportunity to adapt Foundation twice before in my career, but twice before it was as a feature or a series of features. And I just didn't think it was possible to condense Foundation into 3 hours or even three 3-hour films. So it wasn't until, and I have to credit David and Dan at Game of Thrones, till Game of Thrones came out, that was the first really big, I would say, novelistic adaptation of a serialized show. And it wasn't until that happened, and then we had the streaming wars where everyone was throwing their hat in the ring, that I thought perhaps the medium had evolved to a place that it would be possible. So instead of trying to condense, we had the opportunity to expand. And people that have read the books know that particularly the first book, which is really 6 loosely connected short stories. A lot of big events happen off screen. The empire falls off screen, things like that. So the ability to expand instead of condense was, one of the core attractions. And I think also at this point in my life, I've adapted a lot of big material, big properties, and I think I relish the challenge of it. And frankly, I would say the last reason is Asimov, the Foundation series are fundamentally, it's a message of hope, faith in science, faith in humanity, faith in rationalism. I've been involved in a lot of really dark, more nihilistic adaptations. And now that I'm a father of 3, I thought, oh God, I'd love to do something that isn't quite so unrelentingly dark.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And then given that it's really taken off, it was probably worth the 80-year wait that we're just at the right place, right time for someone like yourself with Apple, the budget and the appetite for a show like this. And it's like, once you get into it, it is very complicated. Obviously, the novels are so sprawling, and you've managed to kind of wrangle it in some way that we were able to follow it, which is, I think, big congrats to you. But you want to do it over a long period of time, don't you? You're in this for the long haul. Like you've said, you want to do 8 seasons. That's a hugely risky proposition, though.
Yeah, I mean, is it? I mean, it doesn't mean that we'll get there or that I won't flame out at some point, but go big or go home. I think this story is supposed to span 1,000 years. Asimov himself didn't get to the end of the story. So I think we have 8 seasons worth of stories to tell, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to tell those stories. I know that I get at least 20 episodes now, so that's something. We're a quarter of the way there. But I will say it was a huge proposition for Apple and for Skydance, and they knew it was an enormous financial investment and an enormous investment for their platforms. And they wanted to know that I was writing towards something with my writers, that we weren't just vamping. So I at least had to give them some indication of where this whole thing might end, which was fair enough.
Yeah, it is. And I'm hugely excited for season 2. A real highlight of the show that most people I hear from talk about are the breathtaking visuals. The production design and visual effects are unbelievable. And I just wonder, as the showrunner and creator, what was the most exciting or perhaps terrifying aspect of this really expansive world building that you had to embark on?
I would say there are two aspects. One is that because it's a far-flung future, virtually nothing in the show could be bought off the rack. We have to manufacture everything. We had to come up with our own fonts. And so that was just a design complication beyond anything I'd ever been involved in. I would say the other aspect is that at a time, particularly for a lot of science fiction, when people are moving towards shows that are predominantly filmed on the green screen or in the volume, which is the kind of light box that some of the other science fiction shows are filmed on, I wanted to go in the opposite direction. I wanted to film in 6 different countries and film on location and film with miniatures and go very old school, to go David Lean and, you know, John Huston instead of the direction where everyone else was going. That was incredibly difficult to propose to Skydance and Apple initially. As I said, I literally want to go 180 degrees in the opposite direction from which, you know, big screen science fiction is going these days, because I wanted it to feel more tactile. I mean, and obviously an incredible headache during COVID. But I do think that this show feels more visceral than some other shows. I think a lot of people have talked about how immersive it is, and that's largely due to the fact that we did go to 6 different countries. We did build a lot. Most of those ships were built in miniature and done the old-fashioned way. And I think you can tell, certainly the cast and crew could feel the difference when we were, you know, out on a slope in Iceland or baking in the sun in the Canaries.
Wow, it does feel very tactile and very immersive, I must say. That's a really huge factor, I think. So I'm a big fan of cerebral, thought-provoking sci-fi, character-driven. Having seen all of season 1, one of my highlights absolutely was episode 6, Death and the Maiden. That's where, for people who are watching Brother Days on the Maiden, it goes on this enthralling kind of vision quest of sorts, and then we learn more about Brother Dawn on Trantor as he pursues a romance with Azura, and of course that leads to really kind of shocking and unexpected twists and turns. So that was a stunning episode. I could watch that on many occasions. I'm wondering what you think. Are you too close to it, or can you pinpoint a highlight from the season that you really loved and thought it just came out perfectly?
I mean, to a certain degree, I'm too close to it, but I would say episode 8, which just dropped last Friday, is one of my favorite episodes. I think that I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it, but where we get to in the end, particularly in some of the scenes between Demerzel and Day, was very exciting for me, because I was hoping to get to sort of a deep emotional philosophical place, which maybe people weren't expecting. I'm also a big fan of episode 3, which starts with this short film, kind of the butterfly life cycle of the dying Cleons. For me, the spectacle and the scope are exciting and fun to do, but I'm hoping to move people as well and catch them off guard. And so I would say the beginning of 3 and the ending of 8, and without spoiling too much, some of the stuff that's going to be dropping in the finale.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's so expansive, and yet those really intimate character moments is really what hooked me in. And
Well,
yeah.
What I said all the time to my cast, to my crew, to my actors, to Apple, the scope of the show is like massive. It's as big as a galaxy and as narrow as the human soul. And I don't want to do anything in between. I just want to be super tight and super intimate, or I want to go mind-blowingly large.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you get from the show. One of the major highlights as well, before we go, is the casting of the Cleons, the Emperors. I came into the show not knowing anything. I hadn't read the books. And seeing Brother Dawn, Brother Day, Brother Dusk, all of whom are clones of Cleon. So talk us through the casting of Lee Pace, Terrence Mann, and Cassian Bilton, because you could say that you got lucky, but surely that's not as easy. It can't be that easy.
Well, we did get lucky, and it was also obviously a bit by design, but look, that aspect isn't in the books. That's an invention of ours.
Right.
The Empire doesn't really have a face, and we wanted some level of continuity from season to season. So we came up with that by necessity. And, you know, we started with Lee Pace, who I have fantasy casting up in my writer's room, and we had a picture of Lee Pace and we had a picture of Jared Harris. This never happens, but we actually got those two. And then having cast Lee as the anchor, we had to find a younger actor who could play a young Lee Pace and an older actor who could play an old Lee Pace. And we did some minor cosmetic things with the hairline and their brow, and their teeth and their contact lenses. They're wearing a few things, but it's really just a kind of boot camp with those three guys, spending a ton of time together with a movement coach and rehearsing their mannerisms together. And now it really is second nature. We spent, I don't know how many hours with the three of them trying to hone their mannerisms and have them ape each other and read each other's lines. And I would say, I don't know, 3 times a week for, at least a month. We did it before we started shooting with the three of them.
Yeah, and it's so effective the way they work together so well. On that note, thank you for your time today, David. We'll bring you back for a shortly.
Great.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Prentice Penny, showrunner for Insecure. So far, this final season currently scores a staggering 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone these days seems to be following what goes on there. I know, 100%. That's nothing to sneeze at. Yet the decision was made, obviously, for the show to end this season. So I'm just really wondering, Prentice, is that bittersweet, or, of course, is it always better to go out on a high?
When we decided to come up with 5 seasons as our number, if we had to control it, I don't think we ever were thinking we're going to go out on a high. We hadn't even aired yet. But as we were making the show, we both agreed that like 5 years kind of felt the right amount of time to make our show specifically, just because of what it takes to make our show, how much we have to have it all written before we start filming. So it really ends up being like a 10-month process, and then you start that 10-month process all over again. So we didn't know any of this was going to obviously happen in that way. So I'm glad we're leaving at a space when people still want us around. I mean, it's better to leave, a year early than a year late for sure. No, I'm just excited. It's cool to have people, being with the show from the beginning when it was nothing, when it was just something Issa and I were working on with other writers, to be here. It's like, wow, it's really crazy.
And when the season premiered not long ago now, what was your thought about going back to that final day on the set? Did it bring back good memories?
Yeah, I mean, the last day, they actually had one more day to film before our schedule kept getting pushed farther and farther because of COVID and just all this other stuff. So actually, I wrapped a day early than everybody else. So that was like it was also Yvonne's last day. So it was like, we had been having these sort of last days of everybody. I think Amanda Seals was first, and then the next day, 2 days later, was like Natasha, then it was like Wade and Jay and Yvonne and I on the last day. And so Issa kind of had to finish by herself in terms of like that group, whatever. So, but yeah, that last day was tough to think of, just like rehearsals were tough, and just knowing this is the last scene, because the last scene we filmed was the last scene Issa and Molly have on camera together. So it was also like a lot of I didn't have to push too much for them in that scene at all. They were already there.
I can imagine. Season 4 was a real breakthrough for the show. It's always been popular with critics and fans, but season 4, for some reason, it just scored really with critics and the Emmys. This season shifts in tone a little to season 4 after a surprisingly visceral experience of the falling out between Issa and Molly. Now they've come together. And so can you talk us through what more we can expect from this final season with them both kind of navigating this friendship once again?
Yeah, I mean, every season we sort of have like an idea or a theme that we're like trying to tether all the characters to in their own specific way. So this season, which was the first season that kind of like connected to us in this as the creators of the show, of a lot of the characters are concerned about their legacy and what they're going to leave behind. You have, obviously coming off of last season where there was sort of this contentious energy. And I think now they're trying to be just champions and advocates for each other, and be super supportive and recognizing that these relationships don't come along every day. And so they're really being intentional about what they give to each other, how they're remembered. And so it was the first time that I think we were also as the writers thinking about like, what's our legacy, right? And like making a show like this and what that means. And so I think you're just getting a lot of people who are thinking about, you know, like Lawrence in last week's episode or Sunday's episode was just thinking about the legacy he's leaving behind with his son, the relationship he has with his son's mother. So there's a lot of these, you know, Kelly is sort of jokingly dealing with her legacy about, because people thought she died at her college reunion, and her sort of understanding, like, how do people think of me as kind of like a joke? So that's a lot of things that are kind of happening for a lot of our characters. I think that starts to happen. You're kind of laying down lots of roots, whether you're getting married, having kids, you know, like career blossoming. It sort of starts to lay the foundation in a lot of ways for the next, you know, 1 to 2 decades of kind of how that's going to shape for you. So for us, it was a big anchor this year.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. In fact, I was even thinking that myself. You start to think about what's the legacy you're going to leave for your children or your friends and family and on the world at large. And the show definitely tackles that. And it's almost existential. And as Issa and Molly and the whole gang have kind of started to grow up a bit. On that note, then, what do you think the legacy of the show will be in years to come? What do you think people will remember it for mostly?
Oof. I mean, I think Black Twitter will remember Condola's name being a million other things besides Condola, but in terms of what the audience, I don't know. I just, you know, when you're making a show, you're honestly just trying to make a good show. You know, you're not really thinking about all those things. I think if I had to say like what I would hope people would take from the show is like, I would hope people would see that like a show with people of color can play on just as a high level as any other show, and that some other creators of color are home knowing that like, hey, I can represent my story on screen too. Like I remember growing up, like the Cosby Show was such a big show for me because it was the first time I was kind of seeing like Black characters talk about things that my family was talking about. Like my mother was a lawyer, like Claire Huxtable. My family, mostly I went to college, some went to HBCUs like Hillman in the show. And so those conversations were happening in my house. Although typically I think up until that point, you had mostly seen a lot of shows with Black families as either poor, right? Like Good Times or things like that, or this sort of like white saviorness of like Webster or Different Strokes, where you're like, we're plucking you out of this to have this other very specific life, right? And so, but that was like my life. And I was like, oh, I want to do something similar to that whenever I could do that. And so I just hope our show inspires somebody else like that to go, oh, I can tell my story too. It looks different than maybe what I'm seeing, but there's a space for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this show is a great example of how representation and diversity means something, and how cultures are not monolithic, and they're fascinating and interesting, the people themselves who happen to just be of a certain culture. And I think that's what I'll take away from it as well as on a more superficial level, the incredible needle drops that you guys are able to achieve on this show. Like I listen to the Insecure soundtracks in my car. I don't know. Like, it's a great show orally. Don't you agree? Like it's just,
yeah. I mean, we definitely think about, I mean, our whole goal was like, Issa and I from the beginning, and same with Melina, was like, you know, how do we make this show, even though it's a TV show, as a half hour, how do we make it feel cinematic always, right? That was always the driver, because obviously up to that point, like there's a show of our show that exists on NBC or Peacock that's a very different show than what we made on HBO, right? And so for us, it was like in the same way that I think Scorsese or Woody Allen or Spike Lee sort of made New York come alive, whether that's through the shots or the cinematography or the production design or the music. You know, we really wanted that sort of, like, you can watch a Scorsese movie and hear such great music that take you to a very specific place, right? And so for us, it was the same way. How do we do that in our production design? How do we do that in our cinematography? How do we do that sonically to make the show feel like you're watching something that feels elevated past where it should be, and take this little small world and community, right? Because it doesn't have, theoretically on paper, there's not a lot of scope, right, to the show. It's not like, it's like Dune, where you're like, oh my God, I understand, you know, you're not doing Lawrence of Arabia as settings, right? You're like, oh, I'm in Leimert Park, I'm in Crenshaw. How do you make that feel so much more cinematic than just like, as a, you know, just like a regular thing? So that was always our goal.
Yeah, and the way that you just make LA really pop, like Ava Bukowski's cinematography and all your other cinematographers, and yeah, it's beautiful to look at and listen to. I also wonder with Insecure, I always think that you don't shy away from dealing with characters in uncomfortable situations. Like Issa can be really awkward, and there's a lot of ups and downs in relationships, particularly obviously this idea of maintaining true friendship. do you find it difficult or challenging or interesting or whatever to balance being funny and also being, making us think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we love playing with tone. I think just like in our real lives, right? Like there are times where things are super serious and then something weird happens and it cuts the moment, right? Comedically, or something's going along really fun and then somebody says something in a weird way and it totally kills the vibe, right? Like we've all been in those kinds of moments, right? That there's no like, the world's not all funny and the world's not all, like dramatic in a lot of ways. It's like the world's kind of the world in ways that can flip in a second. And so for us, it was always about like, what's the real moment of this, right? Like, what is it in its most authentic space, right? And what are we trying to achieve here? So for us, we always wanted to continue to play with tone and have it kind of, bounce from, comedic to serious to comedic again, and or vice versa, any of that. So for us, it was so much fun to really run to that, as opposed to being like, oh, a scene has to start all dramatic and stay dramatic, or a scene start funny, it can never go anywhere real. So that was always our thing, was what's just true for these kinds of moments.
Yeah, and that's the key to Insecure. I never really know where you're going, and we go along for the ride, and it always pays off. Obviously, otherwise the show would have not been a hit. But yeah, that does feel really real to me. On that note, Prentice, thank you for your time today. We'll bring you back shortly for our group panel.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor of Gold Derby, here with Rafe Judkins, creator and showrunner for The Wheel of Time. Rafe, I've heard so many people remark that Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time fantasy novel series defies adaptation because it's just too epic, too complex, the scope's too large. Can you please talk us through how you navigated the delicate balance, terrifying I reckon, between keeping diehard fans happy and also not putting off newcomers?
Yeah, I mean, you've just summed up sort of what I've spent the last 3 years of my life trying to do, which is, it is a massive book series. And I don't think, for a long time, people have been trying to pull it off as a feature film. And I do think it defies adaptation in that space. But in the television space, I do think that there is enough time to sort of like live with these characters, to understand them the way that you do in the books. And that's really the thing that we focused on in the TV show. Is my biggest job is sort of condensing and making sure that the story can track for people who aren't familiar with this giant world with 2,700 named characters and different cultures and cities. And it's massive. And I think the thing that people liked the most about the books was that there were these 5 characters at the core of them that they could just attach to and see through essentially their whole lives. And so that's the thing we've leaned into with the show, is just a razor sharp focus on these characters at the center of it and their emotional lives and following them through it.
Yeah, as an adaptation, I know this has been in the works for such a long time, and I hope viewers go into this without making comparisons to other fantasy shows. Like, there's no need for that at all. I went in completely cold and was into it pretty quickly because it felt very accessible to me, even though I'm like, who's that? What's that person's name? It doesn't really matter. I started getting the hang of it. Is it fair to say that the show stays relatively true to the novels, or would you say that you've still had to go off in your own direction? Like, how much of the novels have you adhered to?
Yeah, I always try to say that my job is to maintain the heart and the spine of the novels, that the show really feels like the books feel, and that we deliver the spine of the story of the books. And then it's natural that we're adapting it to television. We have to change a lot of things to make it a show that someone like yourself could step into and just be able to follow what's happening. If we tried to do a one-for-one adaptation of the books, you would just be completely lost right off the bat. So I think that's what I always try to stick to, is that I had read all the books before I came to the show, so I knew them really well and had like a feeling for what they were. I read them when I was younger with my mom, and so I still have a good gut check for this feels like the books or it doesn't feel like the books. And as long as we're delivering that, the heart of them, then I feel like we're doing our job.
Definitely. And, you know, I've got to say, I was talking to someone else who has seen it, who has read the books, who's a super fan. And his first reaction was, before he watched it, I hope they don't F it up. Obviously, he said the F word. I won't say that now. And he said, then they didn't. They actually didn't. They got it right. So you're in that sweet spot between you got it right for the fans and people like me who have no idea really enjoying it. So that's good. That's really good.
If we did that, I feel great about myself.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you're in such disparate locations and it's a really big show. I imagine as a showrunner, how difficult or challenging, really, it seems like an obvious question, is it to keep production running as smoothly as possible when it's so big in scope?
Yeah, I mean, it's just massive. You know, we have on any given day 700 to 1200 people working on the show, so it is a massive undertaking of sort of managing not just the physical practicalities of it and the production, but also, you know, the emotional aspect of it. It's a lot of creative people trying to all collaborate together, so a lot of it is about people finding their voice in the show and making sure that they are seeing themselves in what we're doing too. I'm not, you know, like Amanda had said, I'm not one of those showrunners who's kind of like, this is my vision and like everyone hop on board. Like, I think that television's at its best when everyone who comes to the table is lifting it. And I think when you have that and you have people creatively invested, then you can really make something that feels special and you feel people's passion for it on the screen. And I think, you know, to do that and to interact with that number of people, and keep them all artistically, emotionally, and physically safe and invested in the show is, I don't know why this is a job for one person. It should be for 15.
I know, like, who came up with this concept of the showrunner? But here we are. Like, this is what we're doing. You know, you're not alone in the COVID situation having kind of ruined things for people, but production commenced in September 2019, so a while ago. And then it was shut down in March 2020. And then you resumed more than a year later and concluded in May of this year. Like, I can't get my head around how disruptive and frankly heartbreaking that would have been to stall such a huge production. Can you talk us through that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly, you know, a huge blow to all of us, but I think that everyone in the whole world was experiencing different difficulties of their own at the same time. So you could sort of, in a way, the whole world stepped back for a minute. And so it felt natural that we were too. I think the thing that I always try to keep in mind as we're coming back, because there's this huge level of difficulty that's added to television production of trying to do it during COVID, both, you know, just practically, but also emotionally for people who've been in isolation for months at a time. And then, you know, we're shooting we do a lot of on location shooting. So we're all over the world and people are just stuck in their hotel rooms alone at night, because if you go to dinner with someone and then suddenly you're close contact, the show could be shut down. So, you know, it puts people in an unusual pressure cooker to make something. I think it's, you know, if I try to look at the positives of it, we really wanted the first season to show these kids at the center of the show really grow up into adults, and they have in fact grown up. They are 2 years older. You know, like, we really have seen them go on this huge journey, and all of us who are making the show really feel like we've been through something significant together, and it comes through in all of their performances, and kind of the bond that the cast and crew have is more intense than I've seen on the first season of a show before. Like, there really feels like you know, I would go to bat and kill for these actors, and I feel like they feel the same way about each other.
That's incredible. In fact, I feel like the cast works beautifully together. There's a real chemistry there, particularly with the younger cast, that I was really invested in their story. And I guess that's really important, that, you know, it's like they've been working for 3 seasons, but they haven't. And obviously that's just going to add to the dynamic between them.
Yeah, exactly. It's really been, you know, I think if there's anything positive to take from it, it's that and the connection that those actors have been able to build with each other.
Yeah. You know, it's really telling usually when a network or platform renews a series for its second season before the pilot has even debuted. How important is it for, you know, the support that you have from, you know, Amazon, such a huge player in this industry, to provide you and the creative team so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge piece of what makes the show the show. If we didn't have, you know, the financial support from Amazon and the resources to continue shooting during COVID, and, you know, just the amount of support they've provided to us in all ways through the production, like there's no way you could pull off a book series like this. Because the one thing, you know, when we were first looking at continuing to shoot during COVID, the thing I said was like, I don't want to sacrifice the quality of the show just to keep going. And we can't put our people in any jeopardy. So balancing those two things, that really required a lot of support from Amazon, and they've been huge about, you know, really believing in not just this first season, but what this whole series of books means to people, and what it might mean to them to see. You know, everyone wants to see the journey of these core characters across their whole lives. And so, you know, you kind of have to invest heavily at the beginning to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, having, like a few other shows these days, it's so nice to see women at the forefront. You got Rosamund Pike playing Lorraine. Great casting. So there's so much. I can't wait for people to sink their teeth into this one. I think it's going to be hugely popular. Are you anticipating, like, what are you nervous about what people are going to say? How are you feeling?
No, I feel good. You know, we're pre-premiere, so I'm in a different position than the other showrunners on, where we don't really know what people think yet. But I think the thing that now that we've all seen the episodes, who are making the show, and I just saw the finale, the final cut of it this weekend. We were in the mix stage. So, you know, I feel like we've done what we set out to do, even despite the huge hurdles that were placed in our way along the path. So I think that we all feel really good about it, and that, you know, I've always said the big sell of our entire show, even with all the monsters and magic and giant lands and cities, is that you get to the end of that first episode and you want to know what happens to those kids when they ride out of that town. And if we do that, then we'll have people, and if we don't, we won't. And I think that we've hopefully created something that attaches you to those kids emotionally, and you do want to see what happens to them next.
Well, good luck with season 1. I think people are going to really flock to it. Thank you for your time today. We're going to bring you back now for our panel chat.
Amazing.
Welcome to our Gold Derby TV Showrunners panel. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Amanda Peet, co-creator and showrunner for The Chair, Clyde Phillips, creator and showrunner for the Dexter revival New Blood, David S. Goyer, co-creator and showrunner for Foundation, Prentice Penny, showrunner for Insecure, and Rafe Judkins, showrunner for The Wheel of Time. You know, I always love to know from showrunners, I'm sorry to have to start in a slightly negative way, but it's kind of fascinating to me, what is a showrunner's worst nightmare? What keeps you up at night when you're right in the thick of production? Who would love to regale us first?
I think for me, there's like the specific, that I think I might be the only one in this particular group, but there's definitely the panic of misspeaking to an actor, like, because I'm an actress, like if I'm just like, hey, could you give us some tears in this one, or, you know, like ask for result, or just don't speak the proper like actor language. That would sometimes get me in my head. Like I'd be like, can I just what's it called? Can I just have a shorthand with these people or what? So most of the time I would be very confident that I could actually just sort of be like, hey, look, we're running out of time. Can you just all stand in the corner so we can do a oneer? But there was a part of me that sometimes was like, maybe I should be like, guys, I really feel that everyone should be in this shot together because blah, 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 you know, like, do I have to like fake it to my actors? That was like a big thing for me as a former actor or whatever. I'm still trying to be an actor. I'm available. I have an 8x10. Yeah. Can you guys help me out?
Your headshot is my screensaver. So.
Yeah.
I can see Amanda on Dexter New Blood season 2, perhaps, if that ever happens. So look,
there you go again.
We get, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
So we get talking later. But you know what? That's true, Amanda, because like, you know, are you on that team or are you on the showrunner team? And that's got to be a challenge. Who else? What
Yeah,
other?
you know, there's so much more to showrunning than just shooting, and it's the writings phase is critical. And my worst nightmare is when a script comes in and I'm reading it and I understand that there goes my weekend. I'm going to be rewriting all weekend, and then also, what do I do with that writer? In years past, I would keep giving the writer another chance and another chance, and then we would fall behind. And then you put the writer in the penalty box and make them come up with some character stuff or something like that. And I ended up rewriting it anyway. So now I just rewrite it anyway. And sometimes I've just let the writer go. And that's really difficult, knowing that he or she doesn't get the show and it's just going to cost us more time. And then sometimes the writers off of my rewrite will grow. And in fact, I've just, sometimes they'll grow and become, because it's a learning experience, particularly for younger writers in the room, and we want to have as broad a spectrum as possible. So just to distill it again, is when I get a script and I go, God damn it, and can't have to cancel my weekend. My biggest nightmare.
Too, it's like the things that you don't anticipate and that you can't possibly anticipate, because so often, you know,
I was just about to say,
unknown
unknown.
Raging that you don't know about, and then they're going to come to you when no one else knows what to do. So like, I remember being on set one night on this huge fantastical forest we built the forest, so it's not a real forest, but it was so huge you couldn't see the ends of it. And one of the producer came up and goes, you know, we've lost Rosamund Pike in the forest and we don't know if she's fine. And I'm like, how is this my problem? But I have to go. And like, I put on my hiking boots, went into the forest. I found Rosamund, figured out what was going on with her phone. You know, like you just have to address whatever is happening in that moment. And you cannot anticipate it.
What was going on with Rosamund Pike?
Oh, it's really creepy. Someone had left like a purse in front of her house, and then she was trying to talk on the phone and just got lost in the forest. And so she was sitting off somewhere. It was not a crisis at all. Anyone could have just called her name and we would have been fine, but people thought it was a crisis. And that's
freak out about actresses. Am I right, everybody?
Yeah. I think it's but it's the unknown unknowns. It's the, you know, we had, because of COVID once, you know, we had an actor break a limb, you know, so you're going along and then suddenly, boop, that actor's out. Or we had an actor, because of COVID, not be able to come back. And we're, you know, I don't know if everyone else's show is like that, but we cross-board all 10 episodes. So, you know, we're shooting things from episode 10 and episode 1. And we had more than one instance where we couldn't get an actor back, and we shot sort of half their arc or half their scene, and we had to completely pivot and recast on the fly. And to me, it's those big kind of giant unknowns that you can't possibly anticipate, and then you have to pivot.
Yeah, our show is super location based. And a lot of times we're going into locations in neighborhoods that don't know anything about filming or the process of that. And you're like, we got like half of a day to be here or a day to be here. And you're like, literally nothing can go wrong today. Like literally there is one hiccup, it screws up the whole, and literally it would be like, oh, somebody's grandmother had a stroke, so they're just not here. You're just like, well, that's the day. That's it right there. It's like, that's the first thing that goes wrong. And you're just like, well, this is how we're doing. You know what I mean? So you're like, it's those, I totally agree. It's the things that you just can never anticipate, or something you're like, I just would never have thought. Like there's a wolf in this, you know, like we had one thing where there was a wolf had gotten to the neighborhood and was chasing a guy, had like chickens at his property. And we were filming next door, and it was just, the wolf was just after the chickens. And it was just, you're like rolling and it's like wolves are howling and chickens are going and you're just like, you cut, it's quiet. The second you say action, here come the wolves and the chickens. And you're just like, well, this is all ADR. I guess we're just gonna all ADR this whole scene. So it's those things where you're just like, I just need everything to go perfect, and it doesn't.
But here's the thing, having done this for a long time, if you surround yourself with the right people and are agile enough to handle what comes along, I mean, we've all been through it.
Yeah.
It always gets done.
Sure.
And that's what I hold when whatever has happened. We were shooting in the snow in Western Massachusetts on a frozen lake, and thank you, Mr. Climate Change, everything melted the next day, and we had to rebuild roads and put it all back together, and we all knew it was going to get done because we've all been through all these disasters before, and if you're surrounded by the right people, you make it work.
Yeah.
We were shooting in Iceland, 80-mile-an-hour winds. We had one day shut down because of the winds. We got up again the next day, and right where we were standing, there was an unexploded ordnance from World War II, literally next to one of the actors and the camera, and they had to call the bomb squad and blow it up. And that day was canceled.
Wow. See what I mean? Like, but honestly, if someone had said to me, guess which show had the chickens and the wolves, I would not have said
That's right.
Yes.
I'm just putting that out there. But that's so fascinating. Like any leader, showrunners are problem solvers, and you're always trying to find solutions. And frankly, it sounds really, really exhausting. But so props to you all. My final question for the panel before we go is my favorite. I always ask this. Looking back over the years, is there a series, filmmaker, or something like that you watch over and over, or that moved you, that you love, that's inspired you the most? Open question to you all. It's a hard one, I know, but like, what's your favorite thing that you
pick? Just one.
If you can just pinpoint one, because like, for example, like I watched The Silence of the Lambs when I was 11 years old. Don't tell child services because my parents will be in huge trouble, but I loved that when I was a kid, and that probably is the reason why I'm a little bit, off kilter. What about you guys? What do you love?
I mean, I have a bad one, but Jurassic Park for me, when I was a kid, it was the first movie I saw that gave you that sense of awe, of just feeling like you saw something you couldn't imagine was possible and had like a transformative experience in the theater. And I think, that's, in a lot of times, that's what we're aspiring to, is giving someone like some experience that they'll remember later in their life. So that's one that always sticks with me, or I can watch that anytime that's on, just because I remember what it was like being a kid watching it.
Yeah.
For me, it was Breakfast. It was John Hughes seeing like Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. Like I remember as a kid, most kid movies were kind of kiddie, but to have like a movie like his that played with tone in such a very specific way, of like scenes could be comedic and then dramatic and kind of switch without you knowing that this switch is about to happen. I just felt he captured young voices in such a way that I was like, that's how me and my friends talk to each other. Like normally it was like, you can feel the writer, and even though I was a kid, I didn't know what that meant, but you could feel the dialogue felt like way kids don't talk. And that was the first time that I was like, wow, you can like do this at a level that's like an adult movie is, that has like, that's real and feels authentic. And that was the movie that I was like, well, this is really cool to like, which is again, like working on insecure shows like that. It's no surprise probably thinking about it now. They're like, oh yeah, like playing with tone and those types of things kind of resonate with me.
Yeah.
For me, it was All in the Family. It's Norman Lear. All in the Family, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. It showed me, it's what made me want to become a TV writer, honestly, to see that, and basically, if you watch it, I've rewatched some of them recently on YouTube, it's basically a two-hander. It's two actors in a room for the whole show, and then occasionally Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers will come in, or occasionally somebody will knock at the door, and it should also always be, whatever you do needs to be about something. Whether it's you shooting a show in outer space or downtown Los Angeles, or in a galaxy that we've never heard of. The show needs to be about something. It needs to have a message. You need to be able to say something to make people think. Whether they're laughing or crying, I want them thinking.
That's so true. Who else? David, Amanda.
I mean, I would say, I mean, this is more recent, but I just am in complete awe of Breaking Bad, and just the journey that those characters took, and I'm in awe of Gilligan. I'm in awe of that whole stable of writers. That is I think a textbook example of using long form television to watch characters grow and change, turn a character from, a nebbish into a crime lord, and watch, I also love when characters do what's right for the character, but goes against their own best interests. And I think Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are a masterclass of that, because I think that's when it gets really exciting, because in real life, people do things against their own best interests all the time. But in writers' rooms, we don't always plot that way. And it's interesting when the character says, no, I'm going to do this instead of what makes sense for the plot.
And last but not least, Amanda.
It's so hard to pick, but maybe recently Dave, the show Dave.
Loved Dave.
Incredible. So surprising. Yeah.
I guess I felt like they're really talking about a lot of really serious issues, including race and celebrity and celebrity culture and gender and all of these different things, but not in a way that feels pedantic, not in a way that feels like homework. It feels like just really brilliant in that way, like a sleight of hand, because you're confronting and mental illness, the one from last season where they follow Gaeta for the whole time, and his bipolar. And I just find it to be really shocking how specific it is, and how well it's tackling these incredible issues of our time right now, but in a really kind of manageable, easy way. Like, I still get so excited to watch it, even though I'm going to be confronted with some serious shit. So yeah.
So good. Well, TV can be so transformative when we really immerse ourselves and stuff like that. I was going to say, for films, one of my favorite things of all time is In the Dark Knight, but I didn't want to make David feel uncomfortable. But that's as he's head out of the cop car, and that just brings some tears to my eyes. But anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Well, Robert, speaking of showrunner nightmares, I've got in 15 minutes a notes call on my 8th episode from the network. So you know what that feels like, guys.
Oh yeah, just woosah, breathe, and center yourself. Well, good luck with that, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. All of your shows are so inspiring to so many millions of people, and good luck in the upcoming months ahead. And we hope to see you again soon on Gold Derby. Everybody else, stick with Gold Derby. This is where it's all happening this award season. I'm Rob Licuria. See you next time.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Fun.